You would think the Joker would be the only villain that Batman fears, but that's not true. It's actually the Riddler. And this story's gonna prove it because this is Batman Earth 1 Volume 2. You guys love the last video we did. Check it out at the end of this video if you haven't seen it. So this opens up with a bunch of folks on an elevator. And in the midst of riding this thing, it suddenly stops. And then this voice comes out of nowhere, right? When they're trying to open the door, trying to push the button, right? The voice says, "There's no need, I'm here." And he says, "Thanks to me, now one of two things is going to happen next. So listen carefully." It's one of the coolest riddles ever. He says, "There was a man who lived on the 30th floor of this building. Every morning he would get in the elevator and press the ground floor to go to work. But when he got home, he would press the 20th floor, get out, and walk up 10 flights of stairs to his apartment. Why?" And no one knows what to make of this, which is one of the best things about the Riddler. He would just surprise people with these things, and so in the panic of the situation, they wouldn't think with a very clear head. They would just be rats in a maze trying to get out. And so as they're panicking and trying to open the doors, the Riddler says, "Answer correctly and the doors open. Answer incorrectly and you fall 40 floors. And so it's nuts, right? Because this old woman chimes in and says, like, the elevator was broken. And he's like, "What kind of a riddle would that be?" And he says the correct answer, "He was not tall enough to reach the 30th button, Clarissa." He addresses her by name. A bomb goes off in the elevator shaft and the elevator falls 40 floors, killing everybody there. So it's nuts. It opens up like right off the bat with the Riddler just massacring people. And it only gets crazier from there, right? This only gets nuttier from here. And so at that point, we switch over to Batman and Commissioner Gordon, who are looking over this entire crime scene. Now, this is one of the things to keep in mind. For those of you guys who didn't see our first video, Batman Earth 1 is not that dissimilar from Batman Year 1, which is to say, this is Bruce Wayne becoming the iconic character. So he's not the guy that you're familiar with, where he's like this world-class fighter and he's like this amazing detective and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very grounded. And in fact, Batman's lack of experience comes to bear when he walks into the crime scene and Jim Gordon's like, "You're stepping on evidence." And Batman kind of looks everything over and his initial thought is that it was an accident. If this was a regular Batman comic, he would never step on the piece of paper and he would have been able to like glance at everything once and immediately know it was a crime scene because, you know, it's Batman. And so the clues all start to come together when Jim Gordon says that there was a maintenance man working on the elevator yesterday, but whoever he was not sent by the building or the city. And in fact, he even says, like, watch where you're stepping because the leather on your shoes is going to smudge fingerprints, right? You can't just go walking around a crime scene. And after that, Jim Gordon is just kind of like, "You're not much of a detective, are you?" Right? And Batman's like, "That's not my job." So it's one of the cool things because that will be referenced later on. And in fact, Batman will seek out Jim Gordon to learn a lot of this stuff. But there's also a little bit of catching up here where he asks the question like, "How's your daughter?" Because again, in the first video, Jim Gordon's daughter was kidnapped by the birthday boy and essentially she was going to be killed. Batman and them showed up just in time to essentially save her. And so this sort of situation starts to develop, right? It starts to form when Batman provides the information he has at his disposal, which is to say, after the death of Oswald Cobblepot in the first volume, right, who was the mayor of Gotham City at that point, 5 people have stepped up to seize control of his criminal empire. And so it seems like they're two completely separate plots, but over the course of this story, you're actually gonna find out they are interconnected. More so than that, when Batman asks the question, "How do you know this wasn't an accident?" that Jim Gordon takes him to the elevator and you just end up seeing this giant question mark, right, in fluorescent paint. So it's like, okay, like, why would a person kill an elevator full of people? And this is gonna be one of the things that's gonna make the Riddler so fascinating but terrifying to Batman in this comic, because more often than not in the main DC universe, the Riddler just does the things he does because that's just his character's shtick. Put people in deadly situations. If they don't answer the riddle, they die. And that's it. You just sort of take it with a grain of salt. There's a whole motivation behind why Riddler is doing what he's doing. He's not just some crazy guy. It's really, really dope. And so what Jim Gordon says is he's like, "I'd like to help you out, Batman, but I need more information, especially if we're looking for 5 corrupted officials, which Gotham has no shortage of. Get me more to go on. Until then, I have to go. And so this is when you jump over to Harvey Bullock. Now, again, if you want to know more about Harvey Bullock, check out the first video. But the long and short of it is that he was a TV personality detective who showed up in Gotham, basically proving that he could make it in like the most dangerous city in the world. He was completely mentally and emotionally destroyed in the first volume when he realized how dark Gotham was. And he just descended into alcoholism. And that's really where his character is now, for those of you guys who are curious. But there is an important discovery that he makes, that what happens is when Jim Gordon's running over this whole thing with him, right? Forensics found traces of some paint in the elevator shaft and in the call box, that in turn, Harvey Bullock's like, the call box? And he says, yeah, right, whoever blew the cable was talking to them for some reason. And that's when Bullock's just like, well, we would have found him by now if he'd hacked into the phone line. He replaced the whole call box with a short-range device, a two-way radio broadcasting at less than a single watt. And when the question's asked, like, how in the world did you figure that out? The response of Bullock is, there was an episode of Hollywood Detectives that I consulted on about a guy who effectively used this same tactic. So again, you know, puking into a trash can on the side of the road, he's not in any real condition to offer assistance to Jim Gordon in any meaningful way, but he is able to do it to a small degree. And so the next thing that happens here is you pick up at what's called the Renee Marguerite Showcase. It's basically a great big huge museum show, like an art show. And you have all these people who are piling in. And then suddenly you have this painting on a brick wall where it's almost like the faceless man in a bowler hat, but just a little bit different with the hat removed. And a question is suddenly asked to everybody. It smells like green paint, it pours like purple paint, and it looks like a white van. What is it? And then the door slams shut. So now they're all trapped, right? And so this guy's just like a talking painting. Like, is this some kind of a joke? The Riddler responds, I don't tell jokes, right? And so it's cool because now that they're all trapped, the sprinkler systems activate, all that kind of stuff, but they realize the sprinkler system is not water, it's gasoline. And so this dude just goes running up to the painting and he's like, what was the question? And the Riddler repeats it. It smells like green paint, it pours like purple paint, and it looks like a white van. What is it? And this guy's sitting there thinking, right? He's like, give me a second, you know, I think I might know what it is. The 60 seconds passes, the Riddler detonates an explosive on the back of the painting and blows the place to smithereens. And so Jim Gordon and those guys get there alongside Batman and the whole place is in flames. But it's just like this nonstop assault, right? One person after another. But Batman figures out seemingly that the Riddler is close by, because with the relationship that he has with Jim Gordon, he learns about the whole short-range radio device, which means the Riddler has to be close. Batman canvasses the roof and then sees the Riddler over there and immediately chases after him. And so he ultimately ends up finding the kind of short-range radio device that the Riddler seemingly left behind. And then when Batman goes to pick it up, the Riddler gets the upper hand on him, smashes him with a shovel, sends him flying over the edge of this balcony into the next one where he crashes into a room. Now, this is cool because this is easily a dismissive moment of the story. It's actually going to be really, really dope once we get to the end, because you guys know that Batman, the Earth 1 books always have a reveal at the end. So this chick shows up. It's like 3:30 in the morning by the time this happens, right? This chick shows up and she's basically the one that nursed Batman back to health. And she's just kind of like, man, this is crazy. Like, I have a 6-year-old sleeping in the bedroom, try not to make too much noise. And she's kind of just excited by the fact that Batman works out pretty well, right? And so what does Bruce Wayne say? Well, you know, the little bat is squeaking, you know, like it's... He doesn't make any moves on her, although it would be hilarious if he did. But it's just one of these things where she talks about like how much her kid loves Batman, right? She's excited about him. More so than that, and this is one of the cool revelations, she reveals that while the news says that Batman is like a menace to Gotham, and while politicians are like, we have to do something about this guy, she reveals that as far as most of the general public is concerned, number one, they know Batman did not kill the Penguin because that was the insinuation at the end of Volume 1. And number two, that Batman is doing good for Gotham City. So it's one of these things where she's like, as far as the people are concerned, you're the good guy, which on the surface seems like a small comfort in the face of constantly being chased after and Jim Gordon being like the only guy that's willing to work with him. But what it also shows is if the time ever comes where the city brings up charges against Batman, the people will cut him loose, right? They'll just be like, not guilty, because that guy's pretty cool, right? We like him, you know, and he's awesome. So yeah, go free, Batman. beat up criminals in the middle of the night like some kind of a maniac. And so where he tells her like, I'm sorry about smashing your stuff and things like that, like he just basically gives her a bunch of money because apparently Batman carries around wads of sweaty money in his utility belt. I don't really know why Batman would do that, but it also seems like the smart thing. I mean, who's gonna mug the guy, right? Like, would you be stupid enough to try to mug Batman? No one's gonna do that, right? So I guess it's a pretty safe spot. But then you also get this really cool moment where Batman's talking to Alfred. And one of the things that had happened is that with Batman, of course, flying through the window and all that kind of stuff, he's cut and things along those lines. And this woman had like sewn the injury, although she wasn't really a doctor, doing the best she could. Alfred, who again, from the first volume is more of like a military guy than just your traditional old kindly butler, he kind of gives Batman a hard time. And he's just sort of like, why are you running around in spandex? That he approaches this more from like a military strategy standpoint. You're not going to send a bunch of military guys into a war zone with naught but some gym pants. And that's what he tells Batman, like, you should be going in there with body armor. But Bruce has this amazing response where he says, do you know what body armor says about a guy? It says he needs body armor. And I know it seems weird for him to say that, but it's one of these things where it's like, if Batman is an idea, if Batman is a concept where he's more than just a man would need body armor because a man can be injured. Because following that, Batman beats back up with Commissioner Gordon, right? And again, Batman being Batman, it's not like he's just skulking in the shadows staring at Commissioner Gordon like a maniac. He actually tells him like, I'm behind you, right? And he asks him like, is there anything? And the response of Jim is, there's no fingerprints on the radio box that you gave to us, and there's no way of tracking this specific radio to a buyer. But forensics did find traces of sewage. Now, this is the whole detective thing that I was telling you about, because what Batman says is he's like, I need you to teach me detective forensics, right? Teach me crime scenes. Teach me how to decipher evidence and how to not walk all over it in such a way that I can figure these kinds of things out for myself, because two heads are better than one. And so if Batman understands forensics, he can give information to Jim Gordon that Jim Gordon may not have thought of on his own. But again, it all feeds into the idea that this is Batman becoming Batman. It's beautifully done. It's really cool. But what we end up finding out is the sewer system is referred to as Arkham's Labyrinth because you have tunnels that wrap into other tunnels. You've got tunnels that stretch on for miles and they're dead ends. Not only that, one of the things that does happen here is we have Jessica Dent, the twin sister of Harvey Dent, who shows up at Wayne Manor. Now, as a little bit of a refresher, because we didn't really talk about them too much in the previous video, Jessica Dent is the mayor of Gotham City. She's the one who took over the role after Cobblepot was killed. And then Harvey Dent is, of course, the district attorney. But what ended up happening is a box from the Riddler was delivered directly to Jessica and to Harvey Dent. So she's like, I need to see Bruce as soon as I possibly can. Now, this is when you get to the Killer Croc element. And this is probably the best handling of Killer Croc ever. Because of course, Batman walking through the tunnels, Killer Croc immediately attacks him, exactly as you would expect him to do. And one of the things that happens is that Batman kind of asks, like, what's the deal? And it really kind of comes off of like Killer Croc. This is one of those things where like Killer Croc was getting the upper hand, so he had no reason to stop the fight when he was the one winning it. But as soon as Batman just starts pummeling the guy, he's like, wait, stop. I want to talk now that I'm losing. Right? But like, he tells him like, leave me alone. Like, I just want to be left alone. And he's like, whoever you are, just leave me alone. And it reveals the incredibly tragic nature of Killer Croc as a character in the Batman mythos, because what you have is Bruce Wayne, who's just like, so like, what's your deal? Like, were you trying to eat me? And the response of Croc is like, everybody who comes across me thinks that. And it probably doesn't help that I live in the sewers and I look like this, but he's like, I don't eat people, right? I am a person, but I live down here in the sewers of Gotham because every time people see me, they try to shoot me or they try to stab me. So just go away and leave me alone. Now, this is Earth 1 Killer Croc, right? Understand, Killer Croc in like the main DC universe, yeah, he probably would have tried to eat Batman. Like, to be honest with you guys, like, this is the first encounter, he would probably try to eat him. But because of the nature of him, Batman asks like, what's your name? And the response of Croc is like, my name's Waylon Jones. And so you learn a lot about his character. He has ichthyosis. His mom sold him to a circus guy named Mr. Haley, who basically filed his teeth down to make them look sharp. And so there's a lot of shame that goes into his character because of how he looks, but it's also built on because of how he's been treated. Ultimately, he arrived here because he just escaped from the circus when it came through town and has just lived underground ever since. But what he does do is he reveals to Batman that the sewers were his his own for a period of time until a man came down here. And it seemed more like one of those you stay away, I stay away kind of situations, in the sense that Riddler didn't really mess at all with Killer Croc, and Killer Croc didn't really mess with Riddler. Killer Croc was just aware of the Riddler's presence. He doesn't really know the details behind anything. It's just a dude in a green coat who would run around the sewers, and that was basically it. But what Killer Croc does is he leads Batman to where the Riddler would routinely go. And as a little bit of an explanation here, it is a smart thing to do because word has sort of reached the ears of people around Gotham City, right? Rumors and that kind of thing, news stories. There's a man-eater who lives in the sewers of Gotham. So anybody who ever had a reason to go down there in the first place just wouldn't do it. Even city workers who had gone down there had seemingly been killed. Now, we don't know if they were killed by Killer Croc or if they were killed by the Riddler because they stumbled upon his base, but whatever it is, the stories sort of took care of Killer Croc just being left alone. And so once Batman is taken to this door that the Riddler would always enter into, he initially tries to pick the lock, but he can't, so he just kicks the whole thing open, and he finds the base of the Riddler here. And this is the best part of the story. It is an amazing part of the story because when he's in there, a voice comes on. Is that you, Batman? And he's just kind of looking around, right? He asks the question like, who are you? And the Riddler has this amazing response here, which shows you how cool of a character he is. He's not being depicted here as he previously has been as a villain of the week. He says, that's a difficult question to answer, isn't it? Who we are is really a matter of perspective. To one man, we're a friend. To another, we're an enemy. And to ourselves, why, that's the question we spend our meaningless lives trying to answer. Or is it meaningful lives? Now, are you a madman wearing a mask and parading about for validation of some kind? Or are you a selfless vigilante taking on the burden of protecting Gotham after watching it wallow in its corruption and dirt? Are you both? Are you neither? Are you the killer of Oswald Cobblepot or a manufactured scapegoat? Who we really are is the unanswered question, don't you think? And he asks, Batman, don't you believe that? And so the response of Bruce, then don't tell me who you are, tell me why you're doing this. And he says, that's a good question. Gotham needs an inquisition. So I'm asking questions that I don't want answers to. And this is an important distinction because the reality here is that in the city of Gotham, corruption is such an ingrained part of it that it's just easier not to ask questions. And it's easier to just assume that's the way life is. And so the Riddler continues on and he says, those in the Gotham towers and at the museum soiree are vampires sucking the blood out of this city. I'm putting a stake in them. See, who I am depends on your point of view. From those who have been used and forgotten, lost in the alleys and crying in the morgues over victims caught in the crossfire, I could be seen as Gotham's savior. But maybe I don't care about Gotham. Maybe I'm just someone who likes to see fear in people's eyes as they search for answers. Was it a wasted life or a meaningful one? Is there anything after death? The ultimate riddle. But as Batman looks around at all these different things, right? Maps of Gotham City, he sees a cup of coffee on the table and the cup is still steaming. And he asks, you're still here, aren't you? An explosion goes off, sends Batman crashing into the wall, and the voice says, that should have been the first question you asked. I told you guys, the Riddler is amazing in this story, right? But it gets better, right? So he says, I am close by as always. Now, how about you play along this time? He says, my next riddle, I love this part of the story. He says, my next riddle, I've rigged the first class car of the Gotham L train with enough explosives to kill everybody on board. And I'll be setting them off if my question is not answered correctly. Don't bother trying to call anyone, as I'm sure you already know, there's no service down here except for mine. And so where Batman pleads the role, right? Don't do this, right? You don't have to do this. The Riddler responds and he says, I won't if you win. So here's the deal, Batman. Take my radio with you. I'll give you directions to the train, which is en route. And once you get there, I'll ask my question. If you answer correctly, the explosives stay quiet. If you don't, boom. And he says, go, leave right now, or I'll set the damn thing off. this moment, right? So Batman runs, right? Like Riddler's cheering him on, run, Batman, run, right? You got this. He's like, yes, the next left and then the next right. So obviously he's watching him, right? Like he can see him regardless of where he is. And he's like, I would stop incredibly quickly. You're right there at the explosives. And he's like, what are you waiting for? Jump. So like Batman jumps in the train as it comes by, and that's when the riddle starts. He says, you're at the scene of the would-be crime, Batman, so let me ask you and the people of the first class car, because they can all hear the Riddler. And he says, I'm the part of the bat that's not in the sky. I can swim in a lake in the moonlight and yet remain dry. What am I? You have 60 seconds to answer, or I kill everybody. And so he's just kind of like taunting Batman as he goes along, right? Any ideas? Let me repeat the question. And he does. He repeats it. He's like, what am I? And Batman says, I know what it is. A shadow. Do you hear me, Riddler? You're a shadow. I gave you the answer. And like Riddler doesn't answer and blows up the train anyway. I told you guys, it's the best part of the story. It's the best part of the story. It's amazing, right? God, I love this so much. And so like Batman is just reeling over the idea that he did everything he was supposed to do and still lost. And it instills this sense of fear and anger in Batman because now there's no rules here. It was different when there were rules. It was different when I ask you a riddle, you answer the riddle correctly, everybody lives. But now the rules have been broken, which means the question has to be asked, what's going on here? But Bruce Wayne starts to lose it after the fear subsides and after the anger sets in, because he's like, there were families on that train, kids, mothers, and fathers. He blew it up anyway. I did everything that I was supposed to do and I still lost. So now it's a vendetta. But then Batman also starts to realize something. He says 5 people took control of Cobblepot's empire after he died. And he asked Jim Gordon, do you have a list of victims from the elevators and the museum? Because this cannot be arbitrary. The fact that he blew this train up, even though he was given the right answer, meant he always intended to blow it up. It was always going to be destroyed. And so the list of names is given to Batman, right? And he's like, can you get me a list of names of everybody on the train? Of course, they can't do it right now. It takes a little bit of time. Debris and rubble and all that kind of good stuff all has to be sorted out. And he says, the Riddler didn't care if I answered his question or not. I don't think these are random acts of violence done by some lunatic. I think the Riddler is an act to cover up the real murders. He's killing many to hide one. And so it's nuts because when Jim Gordon hears all of this, right, Batman says, cross-reference the list of victims with the names on the map. I'm betting you'll match one of them to each attack. And I'm betting each of those people works for the city. And where Jim Gordon's like, you think the Riddler's one of the 5 taking out the other 4? The response of Batman is yes. Now he is wrong in that way, right? He is wrong. But what he's talking about here when he talks about the map is he says on Gotham City's map, there were 4 words on it: Crane, Drake, Pierce, and Black. So seemingly he's going after these 5 heads. So again, the Riddler's not one of them, right? Not much of a spoiler, right? I mean, the Riddler's not controlling the city of Gotham. But the other thing that happens here, right? Jumping back to Jessica Dent and Alfred, when the box is open, initially Alfred's like, why would you open this box? You have no idea what's in this box, right? It could have just blown up and killed everybody, right? But she's like, yeah, you know, it's cool. But there's a little note on here. It says, I'll stop asking questions if you arrest him. It was sent to her and Harvey, right? The people who have the power to arrest Bruce Wayne. It's a little mannequin of Batman, right? Basically, it's arrest Batman for vigilantism, get him out of my way, and then I will stop asking questions. Because again, it is a very finite goal that's going on here. And so what ends up happening is Batman, or really Bruce Wayne, tracks down Jessica because Jessica is kind of figuring out that Bruce Wayne is Batman. Because one of the things to remember, and this was lightly covered in Earth 1, but it was really one of those things you kind of have to interpret, that Jessica was very close to the Wayne family. She was kind of taken in as a daughter, and Harvey was as well to a degree, although he was more of a guy who bullied Bruce Wayne for talking to his sister. But the fact is, like when the Waynes were killed, Jessica took it very, very hard, and their roads took 2 completely different paths. She chose the legal system, and Batman chose becoming a vigilante. So she kind of yells at him for that, right? She's like, why would you do that? But at the end of the day, he says, like, what's going on with the Riddler is he's taking out these 5 guys, right? Clarissa Crane from the Housing Commission was on the elevator. Jack Drake from the City Council was killed in the museum fire. Alvin Pierce from Public Works was on the subway. And he says, like, I know all this because myself and Jim Gordon have been cross-referencing names. And what's been happening is money has been sent to offshore accounts owned by a company called Answers Incorporated. Here's a crazy thing about that. With Harvey Dent's investigation, he comes to the realization Answers Incorporated is owned by Bruce Wayne. And so what it looks like, albeit with some modifications of the Riddler, is that it looks like Bruce Wayne is the one who's part of the five heads. He's one of the guys trying to weed out the competition. And so what you get is all these forces descending on Bruce. Harvey Dent goes after Bruce directly. The cops and Jim Gordon end up going to Wayne Manor. But that's when the Riddler is just like one final riddle, right? One final game, because he's got all the pieces in play, right? Everybody is exactly where they're supposed to be. And so while Alfred and Bruce Wayne are just kind of musing back and forth in prison, all the lights shut off, right? Everything goes out. The power's down, the whole 9 yards. The Riddler chimes in. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, officers, Mr. District Attorney, Mayor Dent, and he says, Mr. Wayne, I'm going to ask you a riddle. If you answer it correctly within 60 seconds, the power comes back on and I go back to my game of solitaire. But if you get it wrong, the entire police station will be turned into rubble and you all with it. Before I ask my question, however, let's make this interesting. And what the Riddler does is he unlocks all the prison cells. So now it's a game of defense and a game of offense, because everybody has to fight these criminals off while paying attention to what the Riddler's saying. He says, this will be a true test of concentration. And he says, riddle me this, everyone. There is a criminal in a cell wanting to leave, but there are no windows or cracks in the walls. He has no tools, and the door to his cell is 5 inches of solid steel, but he still escapes. You have 60 seconds to tell me how. And like the timer starts going down. Technically it's the Riddler counting down, but the timer starts going down. The problem is that when Harvey is trying to get his sister out, he's stabbed. Not only that, right, Maroni, just one of the general gangsters who were out there, has a Molotov cocktail and smashes it against the side of Harvey's face. Obviously, this is how Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face. And it's amazing the way that it's done, right? It's crazy because he whispers to his sister, don't let me die. And in fact, this whole circumstance is going to be a massive grudge that she's going to hold against Batman for quite some time. But with 7 seconds left, for the most part, Batman just ignores it all, right? He just doesn't even really try to answer the riddle because he knows the Riddler is going to blow everything up anyway. So for him, it's more just trying to get people out or trying to find the Riddler directly. He knows he's close, so he immediately goes outside and he finds all these vans who are parked out there. In fact, there's 2 vans, Coin and Drum Laundry, which seems very strange to be sitting outside of a police station. He opens one of the vans, the voice chimes in, you got me, Batman. Almost, because the truck is full of explosives. The Riddler immediately zooms off in another truck. And so there's a kind of cat and mouse game where they're chasing after each other, where the Riddler is trying to escape and Batman's chasing the Riddler. But initially the Riddler thinks it's all fun and games, right? He's able to outrace him and that kind of thing. But Batman asks the question, you have a trigger in one truck, you've got explosives in the other. The second truck with the explosives is half a block away from the first. What do you do with the trigger? It's basically asking, are you willing to kill myself and you, or do you want to survive? And so it's just kind of like the two of them, you know, dodging through traffic and all that kind of good stuff. But Batman kind of calls him out. He's like, at the end of the day, this whole thing that you're putting on, this whole facade, it's meaningless, right? This whole Riddler persona, it's all a lie. It doesn't matter, right? It's a ruse just like everything else. And so the whole fight is like descending down into the sewers, and it becomes very apparent the Riddler is about to lose. And so what he ends up doing is pulling the detonator and saying like, let's just do the final riddle together. Let's both die. But then like Killer Croc comes out of nowhere and saves Batman. Slashes the Riddler from the back, right? And of course he ends up getting shot at by the Riddler, but at the end of the day, like Batman just uses his batarang, throws it at the Riddler, right? Basically disarms him by getting the detonator out of his hand, punches the guy and sends him crashing into a wall. And so following that, right, they all just kind of end up consolidating everything, right? Bruce Wayne goes to see Jessica Dent. She lashes out at him momentarily where she's like, stay the hell away from my sister, right? Almost kind of like speaking as her brother's personality. She's not becoming Two-Face, just FYI, that doesn't really seem to be the case. or maybe it does. You have to wait until volume 3 to find out because that one's amazing. But the other cool thing that goes on here is that one, Jim Gordon is promoted to captain, but Killer Croc is brought in by Bruce Wayne to become part of the Bat family. That's awesome. It's really, really cool. The other thing that goes on is the woman that Bruce Wayne had met when he crashed into the apartment and everything got destroyed. He wanted to send her flowers as a way to say thank you. The problem is that when the flowers were sent there, you end up finding out that she was not the person who owned the condo. It was a guy, and that she had robbed the place. The owner was out of town. When he got back there, everything was gone. All that was left was just a little black cat figurine. Obviously, this is Selina Kyle. It's Catwoman, right? It's a great way to introduce her character. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Let me know what you think down in the comments section about Earth 2. I told you the Riddler was amazing, and I will catch you all later. Peace.